Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to the first session of Confex. So, now let's launch our ship to the future with our first talk by Vikas Mittal, where he'll help us understand about the topic testing with my friend generative AI. Vikas is an IIT Delhi alumni working in software engineering for last 2 decades. His focus area includes the development of automation solutions for testing life cycles and DevOps using the latest technological innovations like machine learning, predictive analytics. He is a leader by spirit. Vikas has spearheaded the teams of testing professionals as large as 1,000 plus consultants. So we would love to hear his views on the topic testing with my friend generative AI because it is quite a relevant topic with the new technologies that are coming in. So I would love to invite Vikas on the stage. Hi, Vikas.
Hi, Vanshika. I hope I'm audible and visible
Yes, you're
to
audible
everyone.
and you're visible. You can take over the screen and excited for your session.
Thanks, Vanshika. Thanks for having me here. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And I know we have people from all across the world. So, welcome everyone to this session. And like Vanshika mentioned, my session today is about generative AI or AI for that matter, and how I fundamentally believe that generative AI is the friend which we as testers always needed. So, I think a lot of people fear that AI or generative AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. Yes, it is going to replace a lot of jobs, but it's not going to replace people who are fundamentally strong in their subject area. It can definitely help people who are strong or people who are wanting to be strong to really take benefit from AI. And the next half an hour, I'm probably going to touch base on some areas specifically focused around testing where generative AI can help. And based on my own experience working in this field for last 7 years now, where initially when I did not know that it will be called as AI or generative AI, but I treated it as merely common sense combined with intelligence and combined with using the data and machine learning. But I think what I've learned in the last 7 years, I'm going to share in the next 30 minutes with everyone. I think one fact initially, like as per Gartner, by 2027, 80% of the enterprises will have AI augmented testing tools in this software engineering tool chain. So no matter whether we like it or we don't like it, but essentially majority of enterprises will be using some kind of AI enabled tool in their engineering life cycle. And this is not going to happen only in testing. It's going to happen for development. It's going to happen for product. It's going to happen even more aggressively on the monitoring side. So every engineering job is going to change the way it is done today across the complete engineering life cycle. But again, I'll reiterate, don't take or treat AI as your enemy or treat it as a threat. Look at how you can use it as an ally, as a friend to augment and help you do what you do in a better way. So first of all, let's start with these stages or the areas where AI can help you. Let's start with the very first basic problem, which is requirement analysis, test strategy definition, and even identifying what is the right test scenario to test. Recently, for one of my projects, we were uh, helping a health tech company in the US, which has a product developed in the US for the US market initially, but now they're expanding into European market. So the same product is now going to go to the European market where different guidelines are applicable. In US, you predominantly have HIPAA guidelines to adhere to. In Europe, the GDPR is also applicable. Now, do you expect as a tester or for a tester in your team to know in depth about HIPAA guidelines, to know in depth about GDPR and their implication on how application functionality truly works? I think it is difficult to expect that from a tester when even the product guys may not know all the details. And that is the first step, which basically uh, where the AI or generative AI steps in, because generative AI machine learning algorithms can help you to analyze your requirements, identify the inconsistency in your requirements, ambiguities in the requirements, and help you identify what are the right questions to ask when the requirement classification or qualification is being done. It can also help you to identify what are the gaps in your requirement, comparing your product requirements with the complementary and competing solutions in the industry already available, but at the same time, also validating that against the industry policies, procedures, and practices. So thereby, it can identify and stop or prevent us doing rework at a later stage by telling us, okay, guys, you're missing these in the requirements. At the same time, AI can also help you to analyze a process model. If you're putting together a business workflow or a business process model and identify what are the potential risks with that specific business process model or business workflow and generate test cases or generate scenarios to mitigate those risks automatically. One big usage of AI, which I did 7 years back, was to use the AI power or the machine learning power actually on top of my production data, my production telemetry data, my production database information to identify what are the user flows and usage patterns for my applications where the predominantly users are spending time. It can help us to identify what are the areas to focus in testing before going to production, and it can actually most likely identify which areas are more defect prone or more bug prone, where you will identify the maximum number of bugs. So now, as a tester, won't you be happy if you are able to identify upfront in the requirement phase, or you're able to leverage data from production to identify what are the areas where you can find maximum number of defects, what are the areas where you should be focusing your energy on. That is the power or the information which machine learning or AI can bring to you. The second big topic which everyone talks about in testing or test is about test automation. Every testing project starts with a discussion around test automation and probably ends the discussion about test automation. Majority of the time we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort on test automation, but never truly realize the value for it. And the bigger pain point for that is the maintenance effort or spending energy and time building test automation in areas which never get used. So how can AI solutions help you? AI solutions and even machine learning algorithms or visual context AI, computer vision AI can actually help you to create your UI test automation scripts based on design mockups. They can create the methods using Selenium or any other tool of your choice to create functional methods based on the design mockup for a form on a page. If your designs are consistent, they can create end-to-end workflows of test automation script using just the design mockups. At the same time, how can you reduce the maintenance effort of a front-end script by using self-healing mechanism, which in today's time, majority of enterprise license tools in test automation world have available. So you can use self-healing technique to automatically update your locators at runtime using computer vision AI. You can also use the machine learning algorithm as part of your mobile apps to understand from the user heat map and usage patterns what test cases you should be focusing on and optimize the number of test cases you consider to automate. I think the biggest area where I have personally used a lot of machine learning algorithms and code smell algorithms is to generate the API methods, the methods to automate my API workflows, both end to end as well as within a Postman collection, but the automate my API test cases using completely my generative AI solutions. I agree, it may not give you the complete code from a test case perspective, but it can do 60 to 70% of your job by building out all the base methods which you need. which you can then combine together to create scenarios based on your test cases. It can actually even identify within your API test cases whether that API test case will be effective or not. Because let's accept a fact, I've seen a lot of test cases done at API level where the teams are only validating the response code, which means nothing. Because a 200 response code only signifies that you got a response from the API. It does not tell you that the actual stuff really worked or not. All those issues, all the problems within your API code can also be identified by auto review capabilities provided by a lot of automation tools and by machine learning algorithms, which can go through, scan your code, and tell you if your API code or automation code is really bringing any value or not. I think that one of the biggest problem in testing is has always been about test data. I can have the best test cases in the world. I can have the best test automation suite in the world. But if I don't have a reliable data available at the time when I need it, in the form in which I need it, and in the amount of quantity in which I need, then whatever testing test cases or test automation scripts you may write, it would lead to nothing at the end of the day. That is one big area where, in my 2 decades of experience, I'm yet to see a tool which truly solves all of these challenges end to end. But this is where you can actually create your own solution using machine learning, using statistical techniques to identify and curate your own solutions, to learn from your production data, to create synthesized data from production data and make it available to you whenever you need it. So, how machine learning can help you? Machine learning algorithms can actually predict which data sets are most likely to cause defects in production. They can also identify the patterns in data and generate relevant test cases and test data automatically for the consumption as part of a test cycle. You don't need to essentially take a dump of your production data and remap it. You can just give access to your production data to your algorithms. They can learn from it, understand it, interpret it, and automatically then start generating data for you, not only for your consumption as part of your test cycles, but also generate data or tell you patterns of data which are missing in your current test infrastructure. They can also essentially look at and generate synthetic data which is representative of the real world data. They can also identify and remove irrelevant or duplicate data from data which are available. An area where I have used machine learning algorithms a lot is from a data standpoint is to let them learn and tell me from an industry standpoint if I'm testing an application in healthcare, in e-commerce, or in any specific industry, to help them learn from open data available from that industry to help me identify which scenarios I'm missing in my test suite, which are possibly based on regulations in that industry or available based on the usage patterns in that industry. So that is another area where you can use machine learning algorithms to create data for you. I think just to summarize and based on my own experience, what would be my recommendations in terms of where and how you can use AI or generative AI or machine learning algorithms as part of your testing lifecycle? In the first use case, I would prefer to stick about is about test scenario identification. Majority of the times, we don't use the data available to us as part of the engineering life cycle and the post engineering life cycle, that is telemetry. So I would recommend you to use generative AI to create and identify test scenarios by bringing together your data, which is captured as part of your Jira or any ALM solution which you're using right now, and marry that information with your telemetry data, your production logs, so that it can help you identify which part of your application is more heavily used, which scenarios or which user journeys in your application are more in number, and that can help you identify what test scenarios you should execute as part of your regression bed. It can help you identify which scenarios you should focus from a test automation perspective and reduce the number of test scenarios or test cases which you document today. For one of my customers, I was able to reduce their regression test bed by 87% by just using this one single technique. The amount of benefit which it brought to them in terms of dollar value, I was able to reduce their regression spend by $4 million annually. I was able to reduce the regression timeline from 2 weeks to a total of 6 hours against increasing the coverage by, I think, around 75-80% by adding more browsers. The next step in the problem where I have used uh, data science and machine learning or AI for a lot of factors is my test data management. For a global airline, I leveraged machine learning and data science to curate and create test data across 650 applications by learning from the database in production and creating patterns of data, how to synchronize data across all 650 applications to finally enable me to feed data into all 650 applications before my testing would start to ensure that my test automation scripts can run on a predictable availability of data in all supporting ecosystem applications, and my test scenarios can run end to end for that global airline. The next big area where I personally believe we should be spending more time is defect analysis, both in engineering life cycle and production. Today, if you look at defect triage, the way the defect triage is done, it is basically a meeting conducted between the product manager, the development lead or development manager, and QE based on their own personal understanding of the application, based on their own personal understanding of the priorities of business. They would triage a defect, whether it should be fixed or it should be allowed to go to the next cycle. But if you have access to data and if you have access to insights from your production in terms of which areas of the application your customers are using, which defects are likely to cause more business impact or disruption, you can prioritize your defects automatically without that meeting, wherein that meeting probably can just be a short 15-minute meeting rather than a series of 2-hour meetings, because that is the power which the data defect analysis can bring to you, which can improve your customer experience and the customer happiness index, which allows any SaaS platform or any product for that matter gain on the monthly revenue run rate all the time. This is a technique which I've leveraged for HP when I was testing their e-commerce platforms. The next big area where essentially I my teams are still using machine learning and data science is automatically creating scripts for our APIs and microservices, automatically creating our contract test for our API and microservices. Because once you understand how to use code smell techniques with data science to identify the patterns from your code base for what are use cases you can automate in the code base from API standpoint, that reduces your effort by 70 to 80% in terms of building automation scripts on the API front and building reusable code to be leveraged in test automation. The last 2 points is about UI automation, auto heal. I think I don't need to spend a lot of time on that because anybody who has ever done UI automation would understand the biggest pain point for any UI automation engineer is the auto heal. How do I really make my automation scripts work across different releases? And I think one area in which you can use AI or machine learning for that matter is in the way which I implemented it for one of my projects as a utility. We created a browser plugin which essentially looked at the applications in the runtime and would identify before a script execution starts. It would identify by through a generic positive flow what all elements have changed locators by looking at the element available to the left or the right of the element on which the operation has to be performed. By that method, we were able to identify which our target element, if it has changed property, and automatically update that in our code repository before the actual execution starts. The last is around trend analysis and insights. I think this is an area where the least amount of time is spent by anyone in engineering. When I'm talking about trend analysis and insights, we're covering a little bit broader topic. We're not talking about only trend analysis and insights on data which we capture as part of engineering life cycle. I'm talking about data which is captured beyond engineering life cycle. I'm talking about data which is captured about a user sentiment analysis, about how your users are talking about you on social media, how your users are talking about you and your competing applications or your complementary applications, because that can truly tell you what are the core pain points of the users which probably are not reaching you, as those users may not be coming and creating a support ticket. They may not be reaching out to your support department, or even if they're creating a support ticket, it probably is not coming in the same way to you in the engineering team for to do a trend analysis. Using machine learning and using sentiment analysis algorithms, you can truly understand how and what is the perception of users about your application in real life, pick out situations and scenarios from that to include and incorporate as part of a test suite, and essentially prevent a burnt customer going on social media and writing a big ugly post about your application. This is one technique which I used for a fruit company based out of Cupertino when I was testing their e-commerce solutions. That is where I used the trend analysis and insights to look at the trend analysis and insights of not only our own product, but what people are talking about our competing companies and their products. That essentially helped us to identify what we should prevent going forward inside a project. All the recommendations which I mentioned here are essentially which I've already practiced, which I have already used. They are not theoretical in nature. They can definitely be implemented in the project. And I'm happy to help and connect with anyone who would like to know more on how to make them or bring them to production in your projects. If you want to reach me on, so I can be reached on LinkedIn, or you can reach me on Twitter. I'm available on both these platforms regularly, and I think I'm point on time, leaving 5 minutes for any questions, if there are any questions for me, which we want to leverage.
Hi, Vikas. That was a great session. It was quite interesting and quite in depth. So we have few questions. I would like to take them up. So the first question we have is how much percentage can we depend on generative AI for test scenario identification? And we have a second part to this question also. Which AI you suggest for testers?
See, I would basically I'll not put a number in terms of what percentage you can depend on the generative AI. The way we have been using it in our projects as of now, we are basically using generative AI or AI for that matter in situations where we don't know the complete rules and policies and procedures. Like for one of our projects today is in tobacco industry. We are working with the largest e-commerce company in tobacco industry, and as you know, tobacco is a regulated industry globally. And with every country, and even within a country, the rules change in terms of what amount, what quantity you can deliver of tobacco or weed, because weed also is legal in a lot of countries, of what quantity and in what shape you can deliver weed. So we have been using generative AI to figure out and create our test scenarios around those policies. So I would say what we do today is pick up 50 to 60% of our scenarios from using AI solutions, and then remap and rehash them based on our understanding. The tools which we are using today from a generative AI perspective, obviously we are using ChatGPT. We are also using tools from Amazon AWS from a code smell perspective. And we are also working with a startup. I cannot disclose the name of the startup, but I'm also working with a startup, uh, and their solutions I'm using to generate my test cases for APIs.
Got it,
The
got it.
startup will be live, will be available out of their stealth in couple of months, and then I'll be happy to share the name.
Sure, we will be waiting for that. So I hope that answers your question, Tushar. Um, we have another question from Vivek Gopinath. The question is, can you share details of which machine learning algorithms you have been using in your projects?
So, Vivek, that essentially would depend on the use case which you're trying to solve. So just to give an example, the use case which I was trying to solve in terms of using predictive analytics to predict which areas of my application would lead to larger number of bugs. When I married the production data with my pre-production data, we use logistic regression there as an algorithm. So depending on your use case and the kind of data you have available, the algorithms would change. I think the best way for you to identify what is the right algorithm to use is either go out to a data science guy in your team who can help you identify what is the right algorithm. Another way which I'm using in my own personal capacity today is I load up my data on AWS, and AWS has AI models built in. So that allows me to scan my data and it can automatically come and predict what kind of machine learning algorithms are applicable to my data. So that can be another technique which you can use. But don't make the same mistake which Samsung team made. Don't load your private confidential data on a public platform.
Got it, got it. I hope that answers your question, Vivek. We have more questions coming in. Um, the next question we have is from Manish. How can we ensure security while using third party AI/ML platforms?
You can actually not ensure it because that is what happened with Samsung, right? And I think Manish is asking that question because of what happened with Samsung. You cannot truly ensure because ultimately it is somebody from your team can actually upload data. So what I've seen now post what happened with Samsung was a lot of companies are limiting access to generative AI solutions to their engineers all across, and they're basically making it a regulated environment where a lot of companies are now creating their own front end, or they're creating their own applications using APIs exposed by OpenAI, and which allows them to regulate what data they are passing on to OpenAI. So that is one way which I've seen a couple of my customers doing it today, that they've created their own application on top of OpenAI APIs, and now they control what information is going from their corporate networks to OpenAI.
Understood. I Thank you, Manish, for that question. We have another question from Anurag. In terms of languages, since the model trains itself on content on the internet, mostly available in English, does it reduce the ability of generative AI to test in other languages since limited data is available?
So Anurag, actually that was my understanding as well earlier, that the generative AI is probably feeding on data which is primarily in English, but that's not completely true. There are actually linguistic generative AI solutions as well, which can generate content in the language of your choice. But at the same time, there are LLM models which basically can learn from your own content. So there are LLM algorithms available on AWS, Azure as well, where you can point them to a specific content which you want them to read and understand from. I think that is the next big wave where the cloud, AI, and data would be combined together, where we as users can actually pinpoint and create our own chat GPT solutions, learning from data from which we want them to learn.
That's very interesting. Uh, the next question we have is, what are limitation of using generative AI?
See, as of now, like I said, this is an area which is still maturing. So everything which you do take, which generative AI gives you, you take it with a pinch of salt. Like with applications like ChatGPT, a lot of times even I figured out when I'm asking specific questions to it, the lot of responses came back are very generic, right? Areas where I found it limiting in terms of using generative AI is when you have really complicated interconnected requirements, and if you don't give it the right information, then probably the answers which you get back are not always correct. So for now, I would really use generative AI for more generic and questions and for more areas which are very open or easy to learn from. If there's something is very complicated, intricate, and specific to my application, I'll probably not depend on generative AI for that part, at least for next couple of years before it matures.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So the next question we have is from Hari Krishnam. Where to get trained on own in AI from internet?
Oh, that's an easy one. So that is what even I'm doing right now. I'm learning on my own right now on how to use AI for different work packets of what I want to deliver. And Hari, that would depend on what you want to achieve from AI. Do you want to be a AI developer? Do you want to be a consumer of AI, or do you want to be a producer of AI? So there are three different broad categories of which way you want to learn. What I'm targeting for is basically being a consumer of AI with a developer's mindset. So I am using the resources available to me on AWS and Azure for now because that is what I believe is the future. So I'm learning on the utilities and the capabilities which AWS and Azure provide from an AI standpoint. At the same time, I'm following few people on their blogs and reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can share with you the right kind of people you can read from.
Understood. Next question we have is from Vijay Raghavan. Which area in testing like defect triage or auto healing this generative AI is commonly used?
So I think these are two different topics, right? Defect triage and auto healing. I think generative AI will be more applicable towards auto healing than defect triage. Defect triage is more on the machine learning side, where you would actually need to do more analysis of your data. See that the concept of generative AI is that it can create content for you to consume based on what it has learned. So generative AI cannot do the analysis for you. It can get you output which you can consume. When you talk about specific analysis part of it, that is where you have to use pure machine learning algorithm and then give that information to an LLM tool, which is a generative AI, to create more output in terms of what this analysis means to a common man. That is what generative AI can do for you.
Understood. Um, we have one more question from Sundar. So, hi, because where does this NLP come in picture in testing AI?
So natural language processing, I'm not sure if it will come in terms of testing AI, but what would definitely happen in the future is there'll be a lot of text to speech, speech to text applications coming in the market, which is all NLP for that matter. And a lot of these NLP solutions will be using generative AI or AI in the back end to solve consumer problems. I think one big area where we would see a lot of NLP and generative AI combining together is customer service, is customer connect. So right now, for one of my own NGOs, where we work with a lot of people with disabilities, we are creating an application which uses NLP, text to speech and speech to text. And the backend, we're plugging it with open AI APIs to essentially allow people with hearing and uh, uh, seeing disabilities to essentially use that mode for them to get the relevant information. So I think that is where NLP and AI would combine together, come together.
Sure, understand. I think we are almost there, like the time is up. Thank you so much because it was seeing the topic. I was really curious about what it will be about because ChatGPT right now is so much in talks everywhere in every industry. But this was really amazing the talk that you did, and it was a great launch pad for this conference.
Thanks, Anshika, and thanks again for having me here and look forward to contributing to the community in the future as well.
Thank you so much.